keep you grounded, keep your faith up, you're strong and you know it. Oh, so just smile and live like you want it. Go on, live it, live it, live it. You got this, come on and laugh. Live to be well. Live to be well with Dr. Kim, with Dr. Kim. Live to be well. Live to be well with Dr. Kim. Live to be well. Live to be well with Dr. Kim, with Dr. Kim. Live to be well. Live to be well with Dr. Kim, with Dr. Kim.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Dr. Kim. Live to be well is where we are every Tuesday evening. I'm so happy to be back with you because we have a dynamic broadcast for you. Want to say hello to everyone. Let someone know we're on the air right now. What is Live to be well? Mind, body, and soul. A story is told of a woman, and this woman did not know what direction to take in her life. And one day, a dear friend of hers said, "What do you want to do with your future?" And the woman said, "I don't know." The man said to her again, "What do you want to do in your future?" And the woman replied, "I don't know." The man asked the third time, "What do you want to do with your future?" And the woman replied, "I'm just trying to live to be well." And that woman was me. I will always be grateful to my engineer, my marketing director, Al Rogers, for pushing me a little bit more over that mountain, over that cliff when I didn't want to, so that I could be reinvented to do Live to be well. You too can be reinvented every day to do something miraculous, something great in your life when you think all hope is gone and when you are at your worst. On tomorrow, October 30th, I will be celebrating 8-year anniversary of my husband's passing. Where did time go? 8 years. And I still have to deal with my grief, my loss. I want to say to all of you who are going through something difficult today, that you can live to be well outside of that tumultuous experience, turmoil, trauma. You can live to be well. I'm not saying I'm there completely, but I'm not where I was in 2016. Let me say this. Grief impacts us all, and we go through it differently, whether it's divorce, separation, loss of a loved one, a pet, a parent, a child, a job transition is difficult. And this month is Breast Cancer Month, and we want to be aware because we've lost so many individuals to breast cancer. I am a 6-year survivor. My daughter Micah is an 11-year survivor. Also, I'm wearing lavender purple tonight to support domestic violence. It is also Domestic Violence Month. And so many people have lost their lives to domestic violence. What do we do about it? We get out and we make a difference. Our voice matters. So tonight we're going to talk about how our voice matters, our vote matters. And I have 2 phenomenal guests, really 3. Tonight, ML6 won't be with us. She's out of town. She'll be back with us next week. So I'll be holding things down. Be sure to put your comments in the box. We want to hear from you. And I'm excited about what we're going to do. So let's get into it. And I want to thank you for all your prayers for my children and I during these last 8 years. You are not forgotten, and we love you very much. And you'll see some posts tomorrow of celebrating the life legacy of Arthur E. Nowlin and how much he meant to all of us who knew him. Well, thank you again for joining us on Live to be Well. Tonight, the topic is, all right, well, at first I was like kind of hesitant. So don't vote and see what happens. Don't vote and see what happens. Are you telling me not to vote, Dr. Kim? No, I'm not telling you not to vote. I'm saying to you, if you don't vote, Don't sit back and say, because you didn't vote. One vote matters. It can make all the difference in the world. And what if your thought is the same as 1 million people, 10,000 people? That's 10,000 votes that did not get cast because they thought their vote or their voice did not matter. Tonight on the broadcast, I want to bring in my first guest, Professor Michael Griggs of Wayne County Community College District. He has been with us before, phenomenal professor and historian of Black history and African American studies. Welcome back, Professor Griggs. How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you for having me.
Oh, always, always. Listen, tell us a little bit about yourself and let's get into this don't vote and let's see what's going to happen. Let's talk about that.
Okay, well, as you mentioned, I'm a college professor and I teach in 3 departments at Wayne County Community College. I'm an entrepreneurship department. I have a background in real estate development where I build houses over in Canada and I build houses in Detroit.
Okay.
History department where I teach American history,
Okay.
African American history, and I teach ancient history. I studied over in Egypt, so I can teach Egyptology. And I'm in the Black Studies department where I teach Black psychology and I teach Black politics. And I've been doing this for quite some time now. It's been some decades.
Why this field? What inspired you to go into this field?
I met someone when I was a student at Wayne County Community College, a professor, James Wilson. He was a photographer, personal photographer of Malcolm X when Malcolm X used to come to Detroit. And he introduced me into Black studies, and it just interested me so that I ended up teaching it and fell in love with Black studies. And it's just been a lifelong love affair with us and our contributions and what makes us tick and why we think the way we do and why we spend the way we spend and why we vote or not vote. Or history really conveys so much knowledge about what people do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Let's talk about what's about to happen in a few days, and where is the mindset of our society, our people, our country. Let's talk about that, voting, and how important it is for us to get out and vote as a people.
Well, hopefully we will be triumph in the next week.
Yeah,
it would be unprecedented having a Black woman to be the head of a world superpower, which hasn't happened in almost 2,000 years. So we've been heads of states, but this is a superpower, world superpower. It's only been about 7 or 8 of them since the beginning of time. So that in itself is monumental. And I think what that would mean for generations of young people, young girls who will see the possibilities of what they can become. I'm excited to see what was happening because I know, like when Obama, when he won, how excited I was. So this too, I'm excited to see what will happen. Now this voting part, it's been record turnouts. I think a lot of people are engaged. I know since Obama did something that was unprecedented, that other presidents didn't do when they were running for office. He engaged young people. Went out, got 50 Cent and Beyonce and had all these people with Vote or Die Trying. He was the first person to actually go to young people and inspire them. A lot of people didn't do that because they didn't think they would get young people to come out and vote. But he did. And, young people have been more engaged ever since that time. Because once you turn it on, you can't turn it off.
That's right.
And yes, we broke records then. We've been breaking records, and it looked like we're going to break records, especially among young people. What I've read about, they're really engaged at college campuses on everything from climate change to what's going on in Gaza. We didn't see this type of engagement, international interest in what's going on as well as local. So I'm thinking that I think we're going to be pleasantly surprised this week. I really do.
Why do people say, Professor Griggs, my vote doesn't really matter. I don't need to get out. I'm just one person. I can't make a difference. Where and why is that mentality still such a force today?
Well, I had the luxury to teach both history psychology, Black psychology, and politics. And ironically, these things work in concert. So you can look at our history and look at the things that Black people were punished for doing. And it's been a long line up until this very day. We still stay away from those things that we were punished from doing long ago. It's like a historical trauma, generational trauma. Politics was one of those things. We used to be, we would get killed, murdered for engaging in politics. And still to this very day, a lot of us are very apathetic about it. I had students. I remember when President Obama was running for president, there were young people in my class, maybe 18 years old, 19, first time voting. And the sentiment then was, look, Professor, there'll never be a Black president. A lot of them just knew that was a shoo-in. But then some of them said something that was connected to our historical trauma. Some of them said that even if he wins, I think they're going to kill him. And this was 18-year-old, 19-year-old people saying this. Now you have to think about this. We've heard this a lot, but if people really believe deep in their heart that they can die for engaging in something, it helps explain the pervasive notion of, I don't want to be involved in politics. I don't want to vote. Voting doesn't matter, because it's connected to those oppressive dynamics throughout the generations. So a lot of us today are expressing what happened years ago, that fear that's still inside of us to engage in politics.
Well, you mentioned a key word, and that's going to be a lead-in for me to bring in our next guest, Leah Mills, LMSW. Come on in. Let's get in here and talk about that fear of engaging and what it leads to, and looking at what the climate of our mental health is going to be, the consequences if people do not go out and vote. Let's welcome Leah Mills onto the broadcast. Hi, Leah. How are you?
I am well. How are you this evening, Kim?
I am good. So good to see you, and thank you for joining Professor Griggs and myself. Tell us a little bit about you and your company, and you also ran for political office. Tell us a little bit about what you were able to go through with that.
Okay. As introduced, my name is Leah Mills Chapman. I am a clinical therapist, and I have my own private practice. Intervene is what I call it. And I find myself oftentimes just in various places, social systems, trying to make a difference, right? When I identify harm being done, I go in to try to see if I could actually be a solution to remedy some of the ills. And that kind of led me into the political space, Kim. Being a social worker, a clinical social worker, working along with my clients, I would often see that there were social barriers, right, throughout various types of systems. I started working in the substance abuse arena. And so, the marginalized populations of society often got kicked right to the curb, really, where it came down to aiding and assisting them in getting their lives back on track. So I started there, and then I navigated into working along in juvenile justice, right, work. And so yet again, I'm seeing ruptured family systems. I'm seeing, right, the harm that's being done and imposed within our foster care system. So spaces that should be helping are not really helping. They're actually perpetuating a lot of harm that's being done. And so over my tenure in working within this profession and seeing these sorts of things occur, it kind of brought about, I often call it righteous indignation. So some anger within me, because I kept seeing that those that look like us, Black and brown individuals, were always seemingly kind of behind the 8 ball. Not saying that all Black people are, dealing with all types of social ills, but we still find like these roadblocks in various spaces, right? We see it with VP Harris, right? She is potentially going to be the first Black woman ever in history, right, to be the president. And that should not be a first in 2024, and yet it is, right? So again, systemically, there are some things I believe that are embedded in their structures that tend to keep Black people behind the eight ball. And that brings about the voter apathy in which you kind of spoke to earlier. If I see that a system is always trying to do harm, then how much power do I really have to be able to change this system? And so that can actually do, more of an injustice over time when we feel that our voice and our vote does not matter.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk a little bit when you were involved in the political arena. What office were you running for and you were a candidate for?
So I ran for county commissioner in a county here in Michigan called Washtenaw County. Many may be aware of it, right on the outskirts of Wayne County, Detroit metropolis area. The University of Michigan is embedded within Washtenaw County, and so I ran for the county commissioner seat from my particular district, and the seat was currently held by the incumbent, who was also the board chair. So the first question to me was, oh, wow, Leah, you are going for the head, right? And I said, where else should I go? And so in doing this particular campaign, I saw with a lot of the systems that they have set up for new individuals coming into elected positions, or at least looking for elected positions, some of the I would say belief systems and the value systems that are embedded says, hey, don't waste your time on those individuals who have not been long-term voters. Who are those people? They look like us, right? They are those that may be from urban areas, those that are not, more financially affluent, those that have not voted in times past, simply because the process has not been brought to them. Education has not been shared with them so that they are in full knowledge of what this thing really looks like. And so that was troubling for me to hear from, right, again, our systems attached to the political sphere, for them to say, don't waste your time on those people. You don't have that kind of time. You have to get to those that you know will vote. Well, harm is being done if we operate that way. And so I didn't operate like that. I did not win the election. There was 3 people within my particular race, myself and 2 others. Again, the incumbent, who had already been into the seat for 2 terms, and the other used to be a commissioner twice before, as well as a state rep. So there was a lot of name, right, recognition. And, it split the vote 3 ways. So for me, running in 3.5 months, I came out pretty well with almost 25% of the vote. So now I have some political capital. I have some ears open, and some, things that have been at least brought to the forefront that now people are aware that they need to stay centered on. Yeah.
I can appreciate that. Michael, give some feedback on that.
Oh, what she said? Oh, yeah. I actually gave a presentation a week ago, and I was talking about the system, as Leah talked about. And I said that I think sometimes, since our classes really don't teach us about the system, how it was put together, a lot of times, often we're confused about how things are. We know things not right. We don't know how the thing was put together, so therefore we can't deconstruct it. Yeah. A lot of us walk away with a sense of hopelessness and feeling powerlessness about this very complex system that we know is working against us. Yeah. So I was telling the audience last week, I said, once they created the concept of racism, right, which again, very few classes even talk about it. It's systemic. We know how huge it is, but people don't talk about it. Racism is 2 words put together, right? Race, which we know, the socially term that lumps certain groups into categories. Ism is a word that means system. Ism means system. So you have the suffix and the prefix. So the prefix is race, right? The suffix is ism. You create a system to be an advocate for the prefix, right? So we understand that we are against something that a lot of our people see as a sham system, right? It marginalizes them. It undermines them at every step, every way. So they don't really look at one thing as a thing that's going to change for them, because you got all this stuff working against them. And they don't understand how complex the system is, but they know there is a system that's working against them, and that is the ism, right? And a lot of us, we're not really engaged in understanding that an entire system, this world superpower, most powerful place that ever existed in the history of humanity. But it started off by organizing this entire structure around the distribution of melanin, which is insane when you step back and think about it. And that organization decided who would vote, who would have power, who would get health care, who would be able to marry, where you would get buried. I mean, whether you get educated. It organized this entire system, and we're still engaging in this system, and it creates a certain degree of apathy by people who don't understand it, but they see the social dynamics working against them.
Leah, feedback.
Yeah, they can feel in real time, right? Even though they don't understand all of the various nuances of this particular system, they know what has been done directly to them.
Yes.
Right. And so if I have to interface with, let's say, the judicial system, and I'm sitting there in court, and I can actually see how someone of a different socially constructed race is actually treated versus how I receive maltreatment in that space, then I know that this thing is not set up for me, right? And so, I agree wholeheartedly with Professor Griggs here. Like it just is undeniable. And I do believe that when an individual has not received many successes, and I talked about that this weekend, Kim, but we talked about self-efficacy, right? Yes. Meaning the confidence that one sees within themselves that they are able to do and that they are able to become whatever it is that they desire to become.
Yes.
If you see no wins, if you see no real successes coming about for you and for yours, whether it's your familial system, whether it is your community at large, right? The blight that we see in our urban spaces, the lack of healthy foods in urban areas, right? The lack of housing or the housing insecure. All of these things lets me know, even if I don't get every aspect of your system, I know that it is not working for individuals that look like me.
Right, that's correct.
So when I ran for office, that was one of the major things that I wanted people to connect with. That I am they, right? I am those individuals, despite me having, right, a degree. It doesn't change the fact that I still have to come up against the same sorts of things.
That's correct.
Right? It doesn't matter. And so I wanted just for the people to see that they're loved, they're cared about, and that someone somewhere can identify, because when we think it's only us, then, right, we find ourselves feeling hopeless and helpless. And as a people, and I often talk about this, there may be some that disagree, but in the Black community, we have forever looked for a savior. Am I lying? We're always looking for someone to step into a space that will finally help us. In this whole election and those to come, we have to band together and say, hey, we can now begin to speak for ourselves. We don't have to have someone to speak for us. We are more than qualified, more than capable. Now, and I'm gonna stop in a minute.
Oh, you're fine.
We have some individuals that are of, right, the Black race or African American race, whatever label you have attached to yourselves, because we know that changes, is fluid. But the reality is that we have some that feel like white America is supposed to undo the harm that was imposed systemically, that we should not be the ones to do it, that we are trying to put pressure onto individuals to pull themselves up by their bootstraps, right? The bootstrap rhetoric conversation. But here's the real. If someone who intentionally designed a system to impose harm against a certain population of individuals, I would not put my fate in their hands. Never again. Never again. They would never have the opportunity to say for me what is best for me. And I think that that has been an issue for years and years. And now we need to get to a place where we rise up and we find the strength of the community to be able to do this for ourselves. Yes, we have different parties. You might not even want to go for the parties that are in existence, but we have to look and be realistic about right structurally where we're at. But identify those that will at least listen in.
That's right.
Allow for the conversations to occur and not just cut us off as if we do not exist. So I'll stop there.
No, we got to bring you back on that a minute, okay? Professor Griggs, come back on that, okay?
Yeah, I was thinking about what Leah said, and it reminded me of a conversation I had with the last election when Joe Biden was running. Right. And, we have a lot of people who occupy different spaces now, especially with mass social media. And so a lot of people were rallying around this notion that Charlemagne the God, who's on the Breakfast Club, he put out there, he said, look, I'm not voting for Joe Biden and the Democrats unless Joe Biden, lays out a Black agenda. Right. And a lot of people was rallying around that. Yeah, Joe Biden got to put out a Black agenda. And I was talking to some people. I said, I want you to step back. And this kind of echoes what Leah just mentioned. I said, imagine a group of Black people are demanding that a white man create a Black agenda for them. No other group would expect someone else to create an agenda for them and their children. This is insane. But to them, it was so plausible. It made so much sense to them because we're stuck in this traditional mode that this man is going to make decisions for us. Now we want him to create a Black agenda for us, not realizing that we're in the predicament we're in because white men created an agenda for Black people.
Yeah.
And we're still asking for white men to come in and create a Black agenda for us. And it echoes so much of yesterday. That I remember our mother Harriet said, she freed thousands of slaves, but she could have freed more if they only knew they were slaves. But they were thoroughly convinced. They were thoroughly convinced. There's no place. That man thoroughly convinced them. There's nothing you can do for yourself that's better than this place. As long as I am in control, despite your conditions, you're better than if you go off and be in control and control your own destiny. And a lot of us are still like that. And we are waiting for other people to come and give us an agenda. So in our minds, we can be better off.
All right. Leah, I want to go back to something, that you said, and it leads me to the accountability that we must do and take. That word is huge for me. Accountability and being consistent and being intentional. I'm not looking for that savior to come save me. Because last week on the broadcast, we had Dr. Ricardo White out of California, a psychiatrist, and he said that fear paralyzes us as a people. And, we stay in a place of being stuck. It's easier for me to be stuck. And what did Harriet say to her son? Before I go back and you turn me in, I'll see you dead first. She was willing to kill her own son before she was going to be turned in because his mentality will be better off going back to, to the plantation.
Right.
So therefore, accountability. Mother Harriet Tubman took accountability. Mother Rosa Parks, Dr. King, Professor Michael Griggs, Leah Chapman, LMSW, Dr. Kim, look, we're taking the necessary stand. This is why I do live to be well, to have a voice. I'm not going to allow people to dictate and quiet my voice. Let's talk about, welcome, Thomas. Welcome. Hello. Let's talk about the impact of our families, Leah, and the consequences. And then we'll come back to Professor Griggs. What's happening today? Because, we lost the Lafayette Clinic. when they closed the Lafayette Clinic under Englander.
Mm-hmm.
And then they closed all of these places to give mental health, support.
Yeah.
And when people call my office and they say they have Medicaid or Medicare, and unfortunately I have to tell them I don't accept that, they get so angry that they're being dictated by a particular insurance group. That they're limited in where they can go and what they can get.
Yeah.
And it breaks my heart, So let's look at some of the ideology behind how they're even with Obamacare, Trump is trying to wipe that out, but he doesn't realize it's not just for Black people, it was for all people. So let's talk about that a little bit, Leah, and then back to Professor Griggs.
I mean, I think Professor Griggs kind of touched on it, right? Like if we lead with race, right, and the disparate treatment that certain races receive, it's not necessarily just about the insurance type. It is about who you wind up in the hands of with the insurance that you receive, right? And I've worked with for years individuals that were on Medicaid, and they got the best out of me because why? I cared about the person and not so much about the insurance card.
Right.
And you're going to get the same out of me if you got Blue Cross Blue Shield, right? Or Aetna or whatever else
it is. Or nothing.
Or nothing, right?
Or nothing.
Or bono, right? And so it is, again, when you have individuals, and I think we got to talk about kind of like media and how messaging is what dictates how people see themselves.
That's it.
Right? And so dependent upon what is before you all the time about your situation will make you believe something about yourself. And it makes you believe it because you feel that there is some level of authority in that individual who is saying these things, right? If we learn how to adequately apply, right, weight or, some balance to what it is that we're hearing, and we begin to look at the source of where things are coming from, and we start to do our own investigatory work to see whether or not this person that's saying these things have actually done anything to help really my overall life and my family's life and the life of my, as we say often, our ancestors, right? Those that were before us. Then maybe we could begin to make some real sound decisions. But if we are oftentimes just kind of going on the fly about what makes us feel good in the moment, and we don't do our own due diligence and our research, you can be sold anything and believe it, absent your own research. And I think this is where we fall short. And our families will suffer the natural consequences of the lack of our actions of doing the research to know exactly what is going on. I can tell anybody, I could sell you anything if I'm charismatic, or if I understand how to tap into your emotional well-being or lack thereof.
That's right.
I can make you believe any and everything.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
And if we don't know that about ourselves, that we are emotional creatures and that people can manipulate how we feel based upon what is being marketed to us, from colors all the way down, right, to the words. If we don't understand that, we are sheep being led to the slaughter. And it's not just going to hurt us.
Our next generations.
Next generation. Listen, because it's hard to undo something once it's done.
Isn't that the truth? All right. Professor Griggs, okay.
Yeah, I agree, Leah. As an educator, right? often in the classroom, and we're going place, I'm sure you guys experience this too, just the inundation of just lies, and just people have just been so miseducated. I mean, even in the contemporary era, like right now, just elections, right? So I'm dealing with the brothers quite a bit. And other people kind of got an idea about, some emotional things that they can tap into in our community, right, to get a response. So a lot of the brothers, I was talking to some, and they were talking about this commercial about Kamala Harris. And they were talking about these prisoners, getting sex changes and stuff like that. And I asked some of them, I said, well, have you looked into that? They said, well, I saw the commercial. I said, but everything you see is not the full scope. It's not the full truth. I said, actually, she was actually on a panel explaining what the current policy was at the time.
Right.
But this was actually Trump's policy. That policy took place under him. So he's attacking her in our community and turning people away from her based on something that he created, that he initiated. And this is just one of many lies, which you see Trump now, he avoids certain interviews if they say they want to fact check it. Because if they do, a lot of this stuff would be exposed. But a lot of these things that's coming out is really swaying certain people, Black men in particular, a lot of talk about them. Yeah, you're tapping into things that get us emotionally charged, even though they're manipulating us and they're lying about us. But if we fall victim to these lies, and if they have the outcome that they want to have, we all suffer because the policies are going to affect our community nationwide. But it's all for these lies and manipulation.
See that when you said the key word, these policies are going to impact us. I received something the other day in the mail from my daughter that they are changing her insurance, my youngest daughter, and she's in college. And I called and I said, why are you changing? Well, you have a right to keep this insurance if you choose to. I said, yes, I want to keep that insurance. But a lot of times people will allow these changes to be navigated by the system because they don't know they have a choice. Let me say this, ladies and gentlemen, we have choices. Yeah. And you do not have to become paralyzed by fear or the unknown. Ignorance will paralyze you. And so let's talk about the choices that we have today. God bless you, Thelma. Let's talk about choices. What are our choices that we do have, Professor Griggs, and then Leah?
Well, thanks to our ancestor, we have so many options today. Dr. Logan, I think we were talking about that this early. We were talking about just educational attainment, you and I. And our ancestors afforded us to be able to do some things that they can never do. We're never allowed to do. So we have all these choices before us. But again, some of these choices are manipulated by the lies. A lot of people don't think they can take advantage of some of the very things that we fought and we died for. They don't appreciate it. And to a great extent, even when it comes to politics, I think we need to also let our community know some of the gains that have been made through some of this political struggle we have had. So when we talk about Obamacare, right? When Obamacare came out, and a lot of Black people now were able to have, insurance. We now have the fastest declining cancer rates in the country because of Obamacare. Because now we can go and get screened. Before, people didn't want to pay for it, but now if they got insurance, they can go and get screened.
That's right.
Because this was a gain. So, because you have this notion, some people say, well, nothing happens out of politics. And it's because we're not sharing some of the things that have happened based on politics, right? Do you know that the federal prison systems declined under Obama? Did we know that the Biden and Harris administration, that we have a 50% decrease in Black child poverty in the last 3.5 years? It's 50% decrease in Black child poverty because of these people who we elected. And they have had a disproportionate positive outcomes based on us putting them in office. Because I tell folks, in a nutshell, I have to reduce it, because politics can be complex. I try to make it real easy for my students to understand. I say politics is based on, people making decisions to decide who gets what.
That's right.
Who gets what? We all pay taxes. Those tax dollars going to get into the hands of representatives who you vote in, and they make decisions to decide who gets what. That's Obama right. was from our community. He understood the political dynamics with law enforcement and our interactions with them and some of the negative outcomes and how we feel about law enforcement. He was the person who spearheaded and funded the cameras now that we see all of these interactions that police are engaging on the streets. So a Black man who we voted for, who understood how we felt about police interactions, and now he made it possible that now we see, first time in our lifetime, police officers are routinely arrested and sentenced for killing Black folks. But before, we used to just have to take their word for it. They wrote whatever they wanted to write. We didn't get to see what happened out on those streets. But Obama, because we elected him, ACA, right? Biden, child poverty cutting. It's so many gains that come from the political decisions that some of us make to vote certain people in. And we have gained tremendously, but a lot of people, we still think that, things are still the same. I'm like, you cannot be further from the truth. Yeah, but we don't really talk about the gains. And I think we need to share that with people so they can no longer make these nonsensical statements about how things are just the same, which they're not.
Look at all three of us. We're all entrepreneurs. We own our own businesses.
Yeah.
And our ancestors paved the way for us to be able to read. This is why they did not want us to learn to read.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Because reading gives you a choice. And education, I met a man today in my office. He owns his own plumbing business, but he dropped out of school because he said, I just couldn't fathom how to do the work. It was hard for me. He quit school 9th or 10th grade, and he went into the plumbing business with a relative. And now he owns his own plumbing company. He said, I do not have my GED. I don't have it. But he says, but my daughter is going to graduate from one of the top high schools, and I am prepared to pay for her to go to college.
Yeah.
Because he says, I made a choice, but my daughter does not have to make that same choice. But I turned that choice into something that empowered me to be able to take care of my family. And so choices, Leah, the choices that we face and what we have and what we're able to do today. Let's talk about the choices, Leah.
So I guess I wanted to kind of look at it just a little bit different, right? Because Dr. Griggs shared such a wealth of information on what has come out of us making some choices, right? And aligning with those that care more so about humanity. But I want for us to think about what happens when our choice is taken from us.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
Right? It is being espoused, right, from one of the political candidates for president that is saying on the very first day in office, you don't have to worry about ever voting again. Right? Because the reality is I'm pulling everybody's choice from that day moving forward, because I will be the president forever and forevermore until, right, I close my eyes, right? So we move from a democracy that allows us, right, choice. If after your term is up, we don't like what you've done, we gonna choose somebody else. Versus now we're hearing this person say, the first day I'm in office, I'm gonna make certain that your choice, and this is what he's saying without saying it, right? So there is something that, like, within the English, the subject right, is called inferences. You want to infer into something that someone is saying, right? Meaning kind of read in between the lines.
Right.
This dude is saying, I'm taking the power of choice away from every citizen in this country, and I will reign supreme forever and ever. Amen. That's a scary thought. Now, some individuals are aligning themselves, right, and overlooking what is really being said here by the dangling carrot, right? The promises, right? The when I'm in office, I'm gonna do this. And I would want for us to stop and look at what matters to us. Because if at just a basic level, if all that matters to us is to be able to get a few dollars that will run out in a day or so, but we have to live the rest of our lifetime without being able to say, hey, this doesn't work for me anymore. We just got to take what is given. Tell me if we're not going back in time.
We're going backwards.
Tell me if we're not going to wind up back in slavery.
Slavery, yes.
And I mean slavery in its truest sense, right? We know that we're still enslaved in a lot of other ways, right? But looking at the whips to change, you don't go until I tell you to go. You go over here and work for no wage. You go over here and your body, right, is mine to do with. You have no more agency. You have no more autonomy of yourself. Your choices will no longer exist. That in and of itself, I don't care what Kamala is talking about. I don't care what is going on. If I can still choose a different route, then I'm better than I am if somebody says, no, I choose for you every move you make. And I don't think that we're really looking what is being pulled from us because he's dangling a few dollars. And my heart hurts. Listen to me. I work along, do some contract work with a particular company in the city of Detroit. And they work along with predominantly men, trying to keep them, right, from having to go to prison. And some women are a part of this program as well. And in the conversations that, people will bring up, they bring up about, hey, the PPP loans and the money that they were able to get, right? Oh, he was making sure we was eating, talking about Trump, right? We got these checks. And first of all, Kim, you say you often like to talk about accountability, right? And let's get real with it.
Let's get real.
You ain't had no real business, and you shouldn't have never got a PPP loan.
You should have never gotten it.
Right? Shouldn't have never had access to it. So if you are doing something that is unlawful, there was repercussions even with that, right? The natural consequences came down to some. It didn't come to all.
It did not.
But the reality is that if all it takes is for this system to know that they have already created a poverty mindset because they keep you impoverished, and when they want to use you, they give you $1 to sell your soul, then we got to back up and we got to start all over again.
Yes.
We cannot allow for us to let our deficiencies, our lack dictate this election, because God gonna always provide, always.
That's right.
I don't care if it's not the best of everything that you desire. God is always gonna make certain that your bread and water is sure.
He said that,
right? When the Egyptians couldn't keep up and God got his people up out of Egypt, he said, I'm gonna rain manna from heaven, you're gonna be good. And we have to get back to a space where our ancestors began to trust just that. But if they can dangle this cheese and they can use the popular black men and whomever else to get into your psyche, to sell your soul and your children's soul and your children's children, you're in a bad space. We got to rethink this thing. We only got a couple of days to get it done.
Got to get it done. Got to get it done. You know, this has been so powerful and amazing. And I'm just hoping that the key aspects of understanding you do have a choice. Even with God, God is a free will God. He gives us a choice to serve him or not. He does not take that choice from you. But there are consequences if we do not make the right choices.
Yeah.
My fear, or my concern, not a fear, well, it is a fear, that as I look at Black America, and I got to deviate for 1 second. Professor Griggs, what is going on with our Black men voting for this man? What is going on? And I put this to you because I'm trying to understand, like Leah said, am I dangling something that's so good? Because it's just chaos. He's just using you. I saw a former boxer at the political arena. It was unbelievable.
Yeah.
Okay. I could not believe, there were no words for that presentation. And all he was doing was using that man.
Yeah.
Professor Griggs, what is happening in the mentality of our Black men?
Well, I do want to put in context. It's not all of us, right? So,
no, not all. No,
right.
There are some.
It is a small sliver of disenchanted folks who, like other men, when you point the finger at other people, some of us gravitate towards that too. Some of us, if you say Mexicans are the problem, some of us gravitate towards that too. If you're thinking that somehow the gay community is being, respected and catapulted to places where we're not. When you have people who really don't address our concerns, then that can lead us into many different areas, right? And Black men feel disenchanted about the whole system, to be honest. We do know, as it relates to employment, then the studies show this, if a white company had to fill 2 slots of hiring a minority and hire a woman, he'll get a Black woman because that filled 2 slots. We do know this, right? We do know that when it comes to education, that our women are outpacing us in education. Our women are outpacing us in home ownership. Our women are outpacing us in entrepreneurship. I mean, the whole 9. And we're sitting back, and there's a sense of, and a lot of us really feel that we're in a system that really, nobody really cares about us at all. So it doesn't take a lot to get us to latch on to some things that we shouldn't latch on to. But it's the attention, right? The thing is, whatever somebody's trying to sway us is secondary to just the mere fact that we're getting attention, right? In a system that's been ignoring us for quite some time. And Trump is doing this. And I do have some ridiculous positions being taken. I have to ask people on a psychological level. I said, so you telling me if there was a man who raped your mother or your sister, that you will support that person because you believe you're going to save 20 cents off of a dozen of eggs? Really? This is so insane, especially from where we came from. On a side note, the leadership and what we used to represent. A lot of people don't know this, a little trivia, that some of the kings over and royalty over in the Middle East offered Malcolm X $3.5 million in the 60s because he was the most popular Muslim in the world at that time, to come and be a spokesperson for them. To him, that was so ridiculous. Malcolm X was like, you can't dangle stuff with me. I'm not interested in a shopping spree. There's nothing you can give me that's going to make me leave my people and not address their concerns. Now, being a historian, teaching this and where we are today, and people talking about, I'm going to support a racist rapist because I might save on a loaf of bread. I might have a few more dollars to buy some more Big Macs or something. This is absolutely asinine. And this shows that people really have historical amnesia. Now, this is something that I share with people because even this is just full of lies, right? These social scientists looked at both parties, political parties, the Democrats and the Republicans. And you guys can look this up after this if you want to. And I know in your distant memory, you can just think about this. Over the last 100 years, every single Republican president during their first term led us into a recession. Their policies, every single one.
Every one.
That's like Trump. He led us into a recession. Obama had to get us out. Bush led us into a recession, right? I mean, Biden got Trump out, and Obama had to get that Bush out. You remember Clinton had to get us out of recession that the other Bush put us into. Reagan, his first administration, recession. Nixon, you go back 100 years.
100 years.
Every single one. But what is the discussion now? They lie so much, people think that the Republican Party and their policies are actually better for the economy than the Democrats. There's no historical truth to that. Matter of fact, it's the very opposite. But people have been lying, and they make it seem like they're having real, legitimate historical discussions about this when the history is quite clear. Even if you're not a historian, if you just think about the Republican presidents who came before you, not one in our lifetime have ever not had a recession. Not one. Not one. But they're lying. And people are falling victim to this stuff. And Black men are part of the people who are falling victim to this too. And a lot of them say this. Things are so much better during that recession. Things are so great when people were put in freezer trucks and we didn't have enough bodies for them. I mean, I'm like, don't you remember? You know, I'm like, kids were not in schools. Businesses were shutting down. One of the first times in our lifetime, they had to give children bridge cards so they can eat. You know what I'm saying? From high school kids, my daughter came home, she got a Renaissance with a bridge card. All the kids had to have them because we was in such this economic despair at that point. And it's like people have historical amnesia about what his administration was like. It's amazing how we can forget yesterday. And it's dangerous to forget yesterday.
Yeah. This has been so powerful. Can you believe it's already 10 o'clock? Oh, and we could go another hour. I had so many questions, but we just have to come back. We must come back after the election. You promised me we must come back together and talk about this. Andre, unfortunately, could not join us. He had another commitment, but he's going to come on with us after the election. He will be busy all around the city next week, preparing and getting things done. But closing remarks, Leah and Professor Griggs, and then I'll close out.
Closing remarks.
I mean, we've said
don't solely look at what is able to remedy today. Keep in mind tomorrow. Keep in mind not just yourself, but the legacy, right? Your children that are coming after you. Set them up for the success that maybe you might not even be able to attain in this election. But I guarantee you, if your choice is removed, neither you nor your family will be able to govern themselves. They will not be able to make choices and strides and find themselves where their minds would desire to take them, right? They are to dream dreams, right? They are to, have the visions of being able to have a better life and a better reality. But to be able to do that, access and choice has to be at the center. And so I would say prior to the election next Tuesday,
yes,
right around the corner, slow down, Don't be so hasty in your choices and your decision making. Slow down. Look at what is going to potentially adversely impact you and your children and those that they have to.
Yes.
So I would just leave it there. That's all we have.
That's all we have.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you, Leah, so much. Profound words. Professor Griggs.
I echo what Leah said. I think we have to be deliberate.
Mm-hmm.
I think we need to understand that history is not always about progression, but history can be regression. And this has happened not only afar, but it has happened here. One historical point that made me think about our conversation is Black Reconstruction. I don't know if people know about that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right after the Civil War, there were Black people. There were senators. There were congressmen who were Black people in the 1860s. There were Black sheriffs and everything. And we thought that, we were progressing, and we thought that would be the inevitable path for our future, to be progressive. But there were political decisions by our adversaries, and they stripped us from all of those gains that were made. And it took the civil rights movement 100 years after Black Reconstruction for us to get those things back that we had back in the 1860s. So things don't always involve progression. People need to understand that regression is right around the corner if you don't keep your eyes on the product.
I want to say that the impact that you all have given me to think about my choices going forward in my life, and for my children, for my unborn grandchildren, for my great-grandchildren, for my family. And my word to you, everyone listening, is accountability. God's going to hold us accountable for the choices that we did not take advantage of. And I want to encourage you, and Leah Chapman and Professor Griggs, we want to encourage you tonight to please make the right decision about who you will put in office. Please vote for Kamala Harris. Please vote for Kamala Harris, because we are looking at tumultuous times if we don't put her in office. The writing is already on the wall. We see it. But we need to step up and use our voice. We need to step up and extend an olive branch to each other and encourage each other. I remember when President Obama we were in the line voting, and I went to vote, and I started singing "We Shall Overcome." The line was wrapped around the school, and they all came out to vote for this Black man. We can do it again for Kamala Harris, Vice President Kamala Harris. And so let us go forth and use our choice to make a difference. I've already voted. I already cast my vote, and I'm trusting God for the results. Professor Griggs and Leah Mills Chapman, thank you so much, and all of you on viewing tonight. Now you have to do something very special for me. Leah Chapman and Professor Griggs, on 1, 2, 3, you have to say "live to be well" with me, all right? And as we want people to live to be well, so 1, 2, 3, live to be well. God bless you, and good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you.